Good evening, everybody. We're going to get rolling right away here. Thanks for your patience. Now, hopefully someone's going to be live streaming the score tonight for us because there's obviously an important hockey game on. And on that note, should probably represent. So we'll get this on. So just and make sure you can see it because that's really important. What would be the point if you couldn't see it? Anyway, we've got an awesome Cognac, Armagnac, Calvados tasting tonight. Some rare and old spirits. We've got Kurt and Sean from Kensington Wine Market live with myself, Andrew, and we've got our friend Igor joining us from Toronto. 5 of the 7 spirits in the tasting tonight came out of his stable. Some really cool IB distillates from Sponge, Asta Morris, Vallein Tercinier, Malternative. So we'll talk about those brands, things where they come from as we go. Kurt has fired the order into the chat. I'm going to copy that and put it on Facebook because I know that we invariably have some folks following along on Facebook. So I'll do that in just a moment here. Before we get rolling, Kurt, Sean, I might need your assistance to fill the void for a moment while I adjust something on Facebook. Maybe I'll start with you, Kurt. We have some exciting things arriving in store tomorrow.
We do. This one kind of blows me away. So we had our last Brigati cask come in and sort of expected it to fly out the door like the previous one did. The previous one was 3 days. I'm sure you guys have all heard. These Gordon and MacPhail casks we have coming tomorrow that Andrew's speaking of. It's a Vallein, Glen Scotia, absolute rock stars. I did the check on the numbers that we've pre-sold for these things that are arriving tomorrow. And we've sold, I think, 160 of one of them and 140 of the other one. And the outturns are only about 215 bottles and 180 something, I think, respectively. So it's one of those things that if you were hoping to grab these bottles, you have like days probably. And Jeff just asked about the GNM 88. I assume he's talking about the Bladnock.
Yeah, that's coming spring. Kurt, I think your estimated numbers might be slightly on the high side. I think we've got about a third of both casks, maybe closer, almost at half. Regardless, they're.
You might want to check that, Andrew.
I might have to check that because that actually would terrify me if we're almost sold out of them and we haven't even got them yet. But they're doing well and they're coming. The Balblair, old school sherry, the Glen Scotia, kind of clean for a Glen Scotia, but oily and a little bit tropical with a nice funk. They're cool casks. We've got those planned for tastings. Unfortunately, we can't pour said tastings until some of the other Gordon MacPhail releases that are in those lineups get released. For some reason, they released our casks, but not the other whiskeys. So we'll get to that. And Jeff's asking about the Bladnock. The Bladnock is absolutely gorgeous. It's not inexpensive. There's not a lot of bottles. Like I think there's only 54 total bottles coming of it. It was a very leaky cask, or perhaps the Angels or Warehousemen got into said cask, a mix of all three perhaps. But yeah, that's coming probably spring, summer, if we're being realistic. But as we have you, whole captive audience thing, joining us for a virtual tasting and trying to create time for a few more stragglers to join, as have in just a moment. Quickly highlight some tastings that are coming up after Easter, April 18th. We've got Bryce Simpson for a Grande Glenmorangie tasting, which will be a great range. If you want to do this with wine, Marnie and Co have got a Vietnamese virtual vine and dine. Basically, pick your Vietnamese takeout, grab the wines. The wines are a great deal, 3 bottles for $80, and join them on Zoom. That'll be fun, a fun night in. And then in store, we've got bourbon coming up. We've got intro to single malts coming up. That's sold out. The other one I want to quickly highlight here is our milk and honey tasting with Eau de Guise from Tel Aviv's Milk and Honey Distillery. 8 whiskeys in this lineup, including 2 ale casks and a couple of treats that the distillery sent out just for the tasting. which will probably never come to Canada. So that'll be fun. There's more than that besides. I could scroll down the list endlessly. I think that's just about sold out. The flagship versus distillers edition tasting. I hope people will embrace this one. I think it's kind of a fun concept. We really wanted to try the new NAS distillers editions. And to be honest, I can't remember the last time I've actually tried the standard flagship bottling from these 4 distilleries because, you know, they've been around forever. But we're going to stack them up. It'll be great. There's more on there. I'm not going to go through the whole list here. Likely you're familiar with where to find info on this if you're in tonight's tasting. But there's the link for you anyway. Sean, anything you wanna contribute before we get rolling?
I don't know if I have anything personally for like virtual tastings. I know we have Harmony and I have an agave tasting in store closer to Cinco de Mayo, which should be a fun time. I think
And I have to say, I created what I think is possibly slightly stereotypical, but kind of amazing at the same time piece of AI to promote said tasting. Yeah, like you say words, type words to artificial intelligence and it creates images for you. So I don't know if it's doing the trick to sell the tasting. We've only sold 6 spots so far. Might have to update that, but anyway, it's what's there for right now. But yeah, Sean, that's coming up. There's a gin tasting, there's other stuff, both in store and in virtual. But yeah, let's get rolling here. We're starting off with what has to be one of the best bang for buck spirits, like hands down, which is the Chateau Montifaud 50-year cognac. This cognac has been around for ages. Like it's been around for at least 15 years as far as I can recall. And the price has not gone up on it as much in the last 15 years as you might be tempted to think. This is a very small producer, not far from the heart of the cognac region. There's 6 generations. It's the Vallein family, made from Uni Blanc and Colombard, mostly Uni Blanc, 80% Uni Blanc. But kind of a crazy, ridiculous deal when you consider what 50-year-old anything else sells for. Cognac and Armagnac has continued to be kind of a place where you can go to find value in these days of ultra collectible, premiumized old whiskeys and rums and other spirits. But what's incredible about this is just how little the prices for not just their 50, but their XO have increased over the years. And one of the things I always love pointing out about the Chateau Montifaud XO is that the bare minimum for XOs is 10 years. Like it has to be 10 years of age. And a lot of companies will barely just do that. But with Montifaud, their XO is 25 to 30 years for most of the liquid. And a lot of the independent cognac houses are often offering older spirits, better value at sometimes incredible prices. And just to put things in perspective, Louis XIII, which is a gorgeous cognac, absolutely beautiful, very well made. It starts at 40 years. There's up to 100-year-old spirits in it, but you can be pretty confident that most of it is down towards that 40-year mark. And this is 100% 50-year-old cognac and less than, I think, a 20th the price of a bottle of Louis XIII. Granted, it comes in a bottle with intentional imperfections that can be fragile from time to time, as opposed to an iconic crystal decanter. But yeah, I've just always thought of this as just amazing value. So Sean, you want to kick us off here? What are you getting on the nose? Oh, you're drinking. Too soon.
I'm all the way there. What I typically like with Montifaud in general, what I normally get off them is a little bit gumpier, that slightly sweeter dried fruit, a little bit of old leather. This one also a nice hit of like not star anise, but yeah, a bit more licorice on there. I mean, I guess that's kind of like I
Yeah,
don't know. That's there for a lot of cognacs, but
loads of soft fruit. When you said that, I mean, for me, my nose was initially going to gas station jujubes, like bags of gas station jujubes from when I was a kid. When my dad would we'd go on road trips and he would always want Coke and jelly beans or jujubes to snack on along the way. And it reminds me of that. And there's also almost a little bit of a diesel kind of gasoline note to it on the nose too. So maybe that's
yeah,
why I'm brought back to like the garage, the old school gas stations.
yeah, totally.
Uh,
Definitely a little touch of
yeah.
I don't know, industrial kind of tone on there.
Igor, you were going to add something.
Yeah, for me, it's lots of, kind of uh, Alsatian kind of Riesling notes,
Mm.
that's always have that actually that you mentioned kind of gasoline kind of mix, a little bit. I mean, if it's good one, obviously,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it's a absolutely great cognac for the price. It's basically unbeatable.
Mhm. Kurt?
Yeah, it's pretty. You can see the effects of oxidation there too, taking its time and kind of softening those corners on it. You just said jujubes, but do you remember that great big chew gum that was like ball player on the package? It's got a
Yeah.
note for me. And I squeeze a lemon on it too. And there's this kind of like light white doughy note with the black cracked white pepper and ginger for me.
Yeah, it's the big league chew. I'm even getting like a little bit of like Big Turk. I don't know if you remember those candy bars. Like I get a bit of Big Turk off of this too. It's light, elegant, fruity on the palate. The structure is far from over oaked. So, you think 50 years in an oak cask, there's lots of risk here of just becoming too woody, becoming too tannic. And with this, I don't get anything like that. And as far as a starter goes, I mean, this is like an absolutely beautiful, elegant starter to start off with.
When you mentioned Big Turk, it also I don't know if anyone can relate, but like sometimes like dried red peppers can sometimes take on a chocolatey kind of note, and it kind of reminds me of like a weird peppery chocolate or cocoa, at least. Maybe not full on chocolate. But
Yeah, Marty's saying a bit of chocolate and orange. Sammy's saying orange, dark chocolate. So Sammy and Marty riffing off each other in the background there.
There's a bit of tan in there. Like the sides of my cheeks are kind of sucking in a little bit now.
But it doesn't have that like drying, bitter, like oak character that you get in things that are what I would describe as being over oaked. So yeah, you're gonna get some tannin. Like this is 50 years in French oak casks. You're gonna get some tannin coming from it, but it I don't know, to me it's still very fresh. Like that's the surprising thing to me is how fresh this is still on the palate at 50 years of age. So yeah, not wanting to push things along too quickly, but one of the things we like to do in this tasting, and hopefully you have enough glasses to do this, but we kind of like to leave them in the glass, see how they evolve, come back. So we do our main round where we walk through the whole lineup here, but then we're going to come back and do a speed round where we're going to see how the spirits have changed in the glass. Obviously, your perception of taste, all those things is going to change as we move along. But yeah, that's what we suggest you do. And I'm just going to highlight one last one. We have two exclusive cognacs right now, both bottled for our 30th anniversary. I'm just going to highlight the first one right now, which is a Montifaud 1992 cask. And the craziest part about this is it's 5 years older than the 1992 cask we had for our 25th anniversary. And it's only $5 more than what that one was. This is not even keeping up for inflation. In fact, like their prices are going down in a real sense on this, but still, we're very grateful to have the opportunity to have that. I know that cognac producers like Montifaud are at the limit in terms of what they can supply production-wise. And one of the cool things that they're doing, and not all drinks companies act this way, is they've kind of taken this idea that they're going to continue to supply the markets they've been working with, rather than expand to new ones and cut the allocations they give to their existing markets. And in a industry that can sometimes be a bit cutthroat and a bit forgetful of who helped build their brands, it's kind of cool to think that guys like Montifaud are still continuing to supply this market when they could probably get bigger dollars elsewhere, but that's just not how they operate. So hats off to them for that. We are on to now, we're going on to the oldest spirit in tonight's tasting. We're going all the way back to the 1920s. And I'm going to pull this up on screen. And Igor, if you don't mind, I might get you to kind of give us a bit of an intro to this one, because, well, you've probably tried more old cognac and well, you have to have tried more old cognac and Armagnac than anyone in this tasting. But other than maybe tell us a bit about the producer, I know they're from Belgium, and a bit about the cognac itself.
Okay, with pleasure. Good evening, guys, and I'm right away. I'm gonna start with a bottler. It's my fairly old friend, which I've met many years ago in Belgium, and one of the first whiskey festivals that I attend. His name is Peter, and he used to be, whiskey aficionado and whiskey collector. And at some point, he decided to explore the cognacs, because he kind of fell in love with the cognacs. And long story short, just before COVID hits, in 2019, actually, he bottled his first cognac. And, I tried this cognac, and right away, I asked him, is it going to be okay if I represent you in Canada? And he said, yeah, sure. We know each other for years. And, I was actually absolutely stunned by the quality of his first attempt. And, I consider myself very lucky to represent such a great guy in Canada. He has amazing taste. He's a so-called, like, we laugh in even with the cognac guys at him, that he kind of truffle pig. He's going everywhere in the cognac region and finding absolutely amazing jewels that even some people overlooked, or they not aware of existence of some of the casks. So, for example, this one, it's a very typical example of his kind of hunting. So it's a cognac from 1928. Unfortunately, by the condition of the sales, he cannot reveal the name of the house. But if you ask me, I actually don't care too much about it, because it speaks by itself. What is really astonishing about that cognac, that actually it spent 90 years in a wood, which is very rare in the cognac, because the rules in the cognac industry absolutely different from, for example, if we compare it to the whiskey regulations. So at some point, anybody can transfer from the cask to cask. So it's always begins with a fresh virgin cask. It's a black oak. And after that, it's usually transferred to the less active cask, and after that, transferred to another less active casks. So the main goal not to have that oaky spirit. So it shouldn't be over oaked. So because of that, it's transferred from one cask to another cask. And at the end, usually the best examples of the cognacs usually transferred to glass vessels. It's called demijohns. It's usually like 60 liters glass vessels. And so that particular cognac spent only 5 years in a glass and 90 years actually in the wood, which is quite amazing. And more than that, the story of that particular cask, it was actually lost during the Second World War. And so happens to be that that family, the guy that actually produced this cognac, he used to have 2 daughters. So they got married, and so the company that actually holding the cognac during the Second World War, because the Cognac Association of France, they tried to help to save some precious, casks from the Germans. And God forbid they didn't go to the cognac. So it's, I mean, thank God, because right now we're not going to see that probably. But the Cognac Association of France offered to hide the casks somewhere in the hidden warehouses, and sometimes actually in the caves, very close to the Spanish border. So that particular cask is one of those that was hidden somewhere. And after that was found by the actually grandkids of the guy that distilled this spirit. And because of that marriage and changing the names, the Cognac Association also cannot find who's actually owns the casks right now. So finally, they figure it out. They look at the archives, and here we go. We have this cask. When I was offered this spirit, I was like, I just smell it, and I said, yes, as much as you can, please. And so I've got 60 bottles of that amazing spirit, which is pretty big allocation considering the age. And when he actually told me about the price, I was almost dropped down. I said, do you have more? He said, listen, don't be greedy, because, it's kind of difficult to find the basically almost 100 years old spirit, which is going to be in retail price less than $1,000. It's kind of insane, I would say. So I'm not gonna focus too much about on the notes. You guys here for that, and also I'm sorry, I'm recovering from the little flu, so I'm kind of not perfect with my nose and palate. So please tell me what actually you think about it.
For sure. And Igor, might I add, I noticed that our website says we're low stock. So if you have another case of this, we might be in need.
If you need, we will make it happen.
All right. I appreciate it. On the nose, I mean, it's kind of like matterized raisins, like a bit of like rum and raisin pudding. Like it's sort of decadent, fruity, but in that kind of classic cognac profile. And again, like the Montifaud, at least on the nose, it's not showing any signs of like over aging. It's not getting into those like bitter, tannic, over the top oak tones. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm like furiously typing notes as I'm going through these, not because I keep them or anything, but because these nuances are kind of fleeting, a lot of them. But I just jotted down glossettes. That zinc rub, when you've got a baby, that white zinco fax or whatever you call it, the nasty ointment kind of stuff. Leather, dried apricot, pistachio, mint leaf, old dried out cigars, Spanish cedar, lemon pledge, and like a salty doughy note behind it.
All good, Kurt.
That's,
it's actually, yeah.
Go ahead, Igor.
It's actually almost the same with my notes. I mentioned a lot of apricots. It's definitely tobacco. It's just like wonderful, that humidor, with a very good old cigars, And yeah, that's, and again, it's stunning that after almost 100 years, it's almost not to have oaky notes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a magic.
The palate's got some like really nice ebbs of tropical notes too as it fades out. It's very rare nowadays that I find a drink that wows me. I know that sounds jaded, but we're just so fortunate in what we do, especially at KWM, the things we get access to. But something like this is it's almost 100 years old, and that's humbling. That's really, really cool.
Well, the word that comes out of here for me is that you see sometimes in a lot of tasting notes for these old cognacs is like rancio, that kind of like sweet raisiny kind of fruit tone. And yeah, I agree with you, Kurt. Quite tropical, tobacco, leather, but balanced, not over the top, not astringent, just really, really well balanced. Sean, what are your thoughts?
There's a touch of acidity that kind of lends itself to those tropical notes that you were talking about, Kurt. When I first poured it, I also was picking up on some cool earthy notes that were almost mushroomy in a way. They did kind of fade away, but some of it faded away. There's still a little bit there. Yeah, it along the fruits, it was kind of like if somebody took overripe pears and condensed it down into a syrup. Yeah, but again, just like the last one, there's some nice spice on there too that I was quite enjoying. But Igor's right, like there's like in terms of wood, it's like there's definitely tannin on there, just like the last one. There's it's definitely there, but it's not grippy whatsoever. It's just kind of a, I don't know. Maybe it's that earthy part that I was thinking.
And it's sorry, Andrew. Yeah,
No,
please.
you go.
It's again, guys, like you really barely getting the casks like that in a market overall. Why? Because it's majority of those cognacs overall, vast majority. I would say it's over 90%. It has prominent oak, but it's always few that has that absolutely gorgeous balance, and that's one of the most balanced casks that I ever came across. And mind you, it's natural cask strength. It's never been reduced. Very important point, actually. Water never touched this cognac. It's a natural cask strength of 40 and a little bit. So it was bottled right on time.
Thanks, Jeff. Sorry, Jeff just beat me to putting the arrange order tonight in the chat so we can pass it on to the new guy joining us. Thanks, Tyrone.
Well, it's because we haven't had to use his fact checking abilities yet tonight. So his speed fact checking. Yeah, so cool to get to try this. Something that's almost made a century ago. I mean, when you look at it, 5 years short of a century ago, these were grapes that were harvested and distilled into spirit. Is an incredible thing to think of. So very cool, but we'll come back to it. And if you're on our website looking at it and saying, oh my God, it's almost sold out, it's low stock, it's maybe slightly more than low stock, but still such a cool opportunity. And yeah, awesome to get to try that. And I'm blown away by that. I mean, I have a blind spot, I think, with young cognacs. Young cognacs are just not something that I'm naturally in tune with, but once you start getting some age behind them, they start to sort of hit my palate in the right spot. Armagnac's a whole other different beast, and we'll get there in a bit. But let's bump ahead 6 years in time to the 1930s and try ourselves some 1934 cognac from Vallein Tercinier. And again, Igor, I may lean on you to do a bit of an intro to this one because you've been to Vallein Tercinier. I know you spent some time with them this year, or last year rather.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to spend 1 week right at the estate. So I was actually having permanent access to their warehouse. And it's interesting because in old cognac houses like Vallein, because it exists already for at least 175 years, and it's two kinds of warehouses. It's a one warehouse for the new cognacs, and new, it's considered to be like, let's say 20 years old, right? Or last year distillation, doesn't matter, it's still new. And the second warehouse, which is called actually Paradis, which is paradise, and where's the real amazing stuff held. And you know, when I tried first time this cognac, obviously it's I have no words actually even to describe this, that moment, that effect that actually I've got when I tried it. By the way, it's up to now, it's the highest rated cognac in the world so far, by quite a few bloggers and prominent bloggers. And it's a favorite cognac of lots of pretty big kind of guys like Serge Valentin, for example. It's his favorite. It's his #1 cognac. And in this case, I would agree with him because those 6 years, or maybe not only that, but also that particular cask was well kept and absolutely nicely look after, because we can see it's way higher ABV. And mind you, also Vallein Tercinier, one of the pioneers in the world to do single cask strength cognacs, which is for me was only, I don't know, a few years back unheard of, because everybody accustomed to the cognac 40 ABV, and you kind of, okay, it's given. Yes, cognac is 40 ABV. And suddenly I'm trying the cognacs that actually 50, 60 ABV. And it was absolutely amazing. It's a great family. It's very good people. They're very proud what they're doing. It's a right now the distillery run by older couple, but they grooming new guy from their family. His name also Tercinier. Unfortunately, Vallein branch of the family kind of disappeared, because last Vallein, Paul Vallein, doesn't have a kids, so it's only second part of the family, Tercinier, left. But they have amazing estate, very friendly people. It's really fun to spend time with them. They kind of lots of people in the cognac actually very Epicurean guys, so they like to eat, they like to drink. They really, you know, they working hard. Don't get me wrong, because they are farmers. At the end of the day, they're all farmers, and they're supposed to take care of the crops. They're supposed to take care of the grapes, which is not easy fruit to take care of. And so, you know, I love them dearly. I'm gonna come back soon again to them. Definitely, we're gonna. Right now, we're cooking to have another couple of special casks for Canada. It's gonna be very interesting and I would say exciting moments for us, for me definitely. And you know, it's one of my favorite cognac houses. And on another note, it's not so easy to find some jewels like this, because it's actually almost 300 cognac houses in that small, teeny area of France. If you compare to Scotland, which is like, okay, let's say 130, 140 distilleries, right? But the Scotland, it's probably 2 times or 3 times bigger than the cognac. The cognac is very small.
Mhm.
And on the notes again, guys, you tell me.
Kurt, I know you moved on from the 1928 pretty quickly here.
I stuck my nose in this one and I was ruined. I texted you and Sean within seconds. I was like, oh my God, the 34. There's not very often you get to taste something like this. You know, in the whiskey world, it's the Black Bull Moors and things like that. I remember when Chenway came and poured the Louis XIII for us, and I was ready to sell a bottle of Aurora for it. I was like, this is incredible. And I remember when Abby cracked open brilliant, brilliant bottle of Chateau Montifaud over tastings. And I was like, oh my God, this is another one of those drinks that you'll just, I don't know how you could forget this. It takes all those tropical tones, amps everything up. It's got a little bit of that Cottonhead Trini rum, Sean, that we had in there. Now you're into like really, really moist tobaccos, tons of tropicals, cherry, like a reduced berry coulis or something on top of that, blood oranges, like old churches and things like that. It has something that you can't put your finger on. It just smells old and it's elegant and beautiful. I'm in love with this. I noticed, Andrew, when you showed, it didn't say low stock for this one, did it?
Let's have a look there.
That
means we've got at least 3. So if anyone wants a definition of low stock on our website, it's 2 or less. So that's low stock. Yeah, the nose on this is gorgeous. It's tropical, it's spicy. I get this nice like ginger molasses cookie thing going on. And yeah, Kurt, it's like a fancy old church, not just an old church, like an old church that's got the oak pews, but also like the inlaid leather cushions in them too that are starting to wear. Sean, thoughts?
Kurt, you made a good point with that Trinidad rum that you were talking about. Like, it's actually like almost dead on, but it is like it's the dirty dieselness of a Trinidad rum. A little bit of the fruit behind it, not as much passion fruit that I was getting though, but I am getting more of kind of like a roasted plantain kind of note. I don't know like a ton about cognac or anything, but Vallein or Tercinier is probably one of my favorite houses now that I've had to date, and I think it's just because it always exhibits this. It exhibits the eau de vie just so well. Like you can taste exactly what it is, which is like exactly what I want with cognac. I want to taste like that fresh grape spirit, and this really kind of shows it off. Being so old too, right?
I agree that it does that, Sean, but it does it in a way that's not like overly perfumed. And I find like a lot of other cognac houses, their styles are like very floral perfume. And that's a style that for whatever reason, I just personally don't like, ironically, other than in Bowmore. I find it's like, it's a meatier style of cognac, or it seems to be a heavier, meatier style than a lot of other producers. Not as delicate.
It's actually when Serge Valentin actually comparing Tercinier cognacs, he's comparing the older Terciniers with a kind of very old Glen Grants or very old Macallans, or kind of. I mean, if we're talking in a kind of comparison with a whiskey, and the younger ones, it's like more fruitier style like Balblair or Benriach. And another interesting point about that stuff that, Vallein actually located in a very interesting place, because it's actually most of their estate on the Finbois area of the cognacs. It's actually 6 subregions in the cognacs. And but part of it, actually, they have very little pieces of land at Petit Champagne and the Grand Champagne, and now also they have a kind of mutual small part in area called Borderie. So that actually given them opportunity to have such an amazing array of the different styles. So you have in your store right now like 1990 from Bon Bois, and which is reminding me of the kind of sherry malt. And you have, for example, 98 or 72, which is dry and very fruity and perfumey, not in a bad way, but still perfumey. And also what I found was Vallein Tercinier, they really diverse. They not shy to bottle different stuff. If we will try to talk to their house style, I'm not sure that I can, because the most important thing for them, it's a quality of the distillate and the quality of the cask. That's the main goal. If it's not achieved, the real quality that they would like to have, it's going to the blend.
Mm.
They have amazing blends, and it's very successfully, adding to the blend some core, whatever, or interesting elements. So, cognac, it's very interesting piece of land, and cognac people, very interesting people.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on to something a little younger, the 1972 from the Sponge Cognac lineup. So this is obviously Decadent Drinks, which is linked with Angus McRailed, and this particular cognac, distilled in 1972, only 180 bottles. I'm just looking, Igor, given what you've said, I'm looking at the notes that Decadent Drinks has put on there, and I'm noticing a word in there, and I'm wondering where on earth is this cognac from? Because there's something in the description from the Whiskey Sponge page that makes me think we might be revisiting a cognac we just had, but a much younger one. You're muted, by the way, Igor. I don't know if you're not coming through.
What word do you mean? Sorry.
Oh, it's there. The description here is talking about Glen Grant again.
Oh,
in
okay. That's
Sponge.
accident. That's actually accidentally. But maybe not accidentally. Maybe it's kind of stuck to my mind because I just talked to Angus a couple of days ago, and we sharing love for Glen Grants, so it may be subconsciously it's actually come to my mouth, and that's actually very interesting cognac too, because it came from the house. I mean, the Sponge bottled this cognac, but he bought it from the very interesting, very unusual producer in France, because I don't know too many actually bottlers, independent cognac bottlers, but it's actually one of them in France. It's Jean Grouperin or Grouperin. So it's a company that actually buying cognacs from the small producers, sometimes from the farmers. Same kind of type business as Darroze in Armagnac. So it's Jean Grouperin. It's actually in cognac. I've been in his office and his house and his warehouses, and that guy probably, I would say, one of the pioneers right now, kind of nowadays pioneers of the cognac, because he's not shy, he's not scared. He can put absolutely unpopular areas of the cognac, because it's, everybody talking about Grand Champagne, Petit Champagne, maximum Fin Bois, but not too many people put Bon Bois, Borderie, and God forbid, Le Ordinaire, which is kind of considered to be the lowest kind of rate of the cognacs. But I tried in his house actually Le Ordinaire, which he bottled just in 2022, and it's gorgeous. He's one of those guys. Sorry, guys. He's one of those guys that actually doing something that not too many people do. And he's fairly young. He's probably not even 40, because his father actually founded the business, and it was pretty fast passed to his son, when at that point he was like only 23 or something like that. So he's around 40 years old, but he is considered to be one of the best cognac specialists in the world, and on top of that, very nice guy, which is kind of nice, and a nice addition. So Angus became friends with him, and they cooking all the time together something interesting. And for example, the new cognac gonna come soon to Canada, more or less soon, maybe in a couple of months or something like that. It's gonna be their mutual creation. It's going to be the blend of the few petit champagnes, which is kind of cool. So again, I love this cognac, but it's way more, way stronger, way kind of, you know, I would say compared to that insanely old stuff, it's more upfront. It's more kind of, it's really cask strength stuff. You know, it's big. So
It's more oak forward too, even though it's a little younger. Like there's that toastiness, the spice coming through. It's not, again, the oak's not overwhelming anything, but it's a bit more upfront. Kurt, what do you think about this guy here?
It's a perfect follow-up to the last one because it does carry a lot of those tropical tones over here. It's juicy. This one's a little more rounded, a little more chocolatey and stuff going on, but tons of tropicals again, pepper, tropical fruits and stuff. A good kind of step down because when you throw your climax in the middle there, you kind of got to work it down so the rest of the lineup isn't disappointing. I want this bottle as well. So my birthday is next week if anybody's looking for.
Yeah. Well, if the Montifaud 50 was your gas station jujubes, this is the jelly bellies to me. It's the like assorted fruit flavored jelly belly jelly beans. And it's kind of light and fresh, but it's got a weight to it. It's not like the spirit itself is not soft. It's got a bit of a heavier feel. But like that 50-year, it's still very, very fresh. And I mean, 1972 is not, you know, we're talking 40, 45, 48 plus years, depending on when this was bottled. You know, 49 years. I think this is a 49-year-old, isn't it? Regardless, like this has got some age there, but yet it's retained a nice freshness to it of the spirit. Sean, what are you thinking?
I love how much spice is on that one. That one goes a little bit more into like cinnamon, cardamom, and then a bit of star anise on the finish. But as you mentioned, with a little bit more of those kind of juicy fruits, kind of mid palate. But I don't know. I also really like the alcohol in it, like being cask strength. I mean, it doesn't always work for cognac, especially if you're looking for something a bit more comforting. But this definitely it keeps it kind of lively. Another thing I realized, and I didn't really know that was who it was, but our one and only ever Cadenhead cognac is from the same guy, Gros Perrin. Yeah, that was kind of cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and that was
yeah. Oh, sorry. And don't forget, guys, about the spice and about the liveliness of that cognac. I'm pretty positive, I'm pretty sure that cognac was never been transferred to, God forbid, to the glass. That's for sure. It's 100%. And it might be actually never been transferred to even another cask. Because majority of the cognac producers and aficionados that actually dealing with the cognac trying to get maximum age in original cask. So I suspect that it was actually held all 49 years in the same cask. That's why you have way more spice. That's why you have, so that cognac never been muted, you know, kind of in a way of the transformation to another cask.
Wait,
so that's yeah.
Sorry, you said cognac typically always starts off in virgin oak. So that means it spent the entire 49 years in virgin oak?
It's not always. It's in majority of the cases, let's say in 80% of the cases. Sometimes if it's really amazing distillate and actually the cognac producer actually feel that it's a nice run, so the cognac has potential for the long aging, which is not always the case. You know, guys, we keep forgetting a few things about the cognac as opposed to the whiskey. Because the raw material for the whiskey is obviously grains, right? It's very stable material. But over here we have grapes. So it's a good harvest. or bad harvest. It's a good weather condition when they actually grapes harvested or not. How was winter? Is it thick skin or thin skin? Is it enough sugars or not enough sugars? So it's so many variables actually when you're making the cognac as opposed to the whiskey. I mean, first of all, beginning from the source. So sometimes it's some years better than other years. And if you have a very good vintage of the grapes itself, so it's way more potential to have a full maturation of the cognac. So I'm almost positive that actually that particular cognac spent his whole life in one cask.
Yeah, I've been to visit some of the cognac producers, and I know in the case of companies like Montifaud, most of what they're maturing is full term maturation, and they're pretty upfront about what their ages are. But you go to other producers, some of whom are still very good, and a lot of their older elements are all in glass demijohns, and they're storing them in those because they're trying to preserve the spirit that they're going to use to either blend into some of their other releases or that they're going to sprinkle out over time. And they don't want to leave it in the wood to basically overcook, essentially. And a lot of what you see, I think, from companies like Hardy as well, too, some of these older bottlers, older cognac producers, is stuff that's been bottled years, if not decades ago, to preserve it in the state that it's in, so they can continue to release it over time.
Yeah, but you see, even you actually mentioned, and it's very interesting detail about that particular cognac. It's 49 years old, so it might be, I would say, way more attractive or even sexier to put on a bottle 50 years, you know. But it was actually bottled at 49 years old, so it's a reason behind it. I think it just got the prime, and maybe another year or maybe another couple of years, and it's going to be ruined, this cognac. It's going to be overly spiced, over oaky, and so on. So 49 years, I don't think so it's accidental number.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. This is and now for something completely different moment, where we're going to switch from grapes to apples. So the first four spirits we had here are all cognac, which are essentially pot stilled grape spirit. We're now moving on to Calvados, and I'm going to be totally honest here. Calvados is something I've struggled with for a long time. I've had some good Calvados, but it's a spirit that I've struggled with, and I'm interested to see how this one comes across. And I think because I've struggled with it, I'm going to be honest, unlike Armagnac and Cognac, I don't feel like I have a good feel for it. I don't know what the distillation techniques are like. I know what they are for Cognac versus Armagnac, where, you know, Armagnac, you're going for a rougher single distillation, often in a kind of a very rugged column still, as opposed to an alembic pot still for your cognacs. Igor or Sean, even, I'm hoping one of you guys knows. I honestly have no idea what kind of still or anything, how many distillations in Calvados, because it's just not something that's ever really been on my radar. I've always thought of it as like a cooking brandy. And I know in recent years, we've got some of those more premium Calvados. I know Greg and Yarka bring in that one range. Igor started bringing in some Calvados. So I don't know, Sean, have you got anything for us, or should we, Sean?
Not a ton. Like, honestly, the last time I did a bunch of research on Calvados was when I just did a name that spirit tasting, which I just did a bunch of blind spirits that were completely like non-familiar with people, and I kind of like tippy-toed what things were so people could guess at it. So I don't really remember.
Okay, so it's probably would be me again. So I've been in Calvados and I've been in a couple of distilleries. And
Igor, by that standard, you are an expert here tonight. So
Okay. Okay. So it's not exactly, I cannot say to you like definitely what type of steels they using, because I've seen column steels, like a pretty small one, and I've seen pot steels in Calvados in the different houses. So I never been in that house, in that particular house, because it's Christian Drouin, actually. It's from the Christian Drouin stable. I've been in kind of very smaller couple of houses, which I'm also bringing to Canada, and they have a pot steel. And in Calvados, it's quite a bit interesting because it's a two areas, and my favorite area is called Domfrontai. Why it's favorite? Because they put in actually in a blend, in a mash, not only apples, they put a kind of up to 30% of the pears. And I'm always looking for those ones, because in my opinion they kind of more interesting, and I would say tastier, again, to me. Maturation, again, it can be maturation in a casks full time, or it can be a few years in a cask, and after that demijohns. It can be in Calvados, in majority of cases, vast majority of cases, it's a virgin casks in the beginning, but only for the couple of years, and after that they transferred that in a kind of big casks, like really huge vessels that actually in a kind of built in their warehouse. So it's probably like, I don't know, 1,500 liters or 2,000 liters. That's what I've seen. But and it's slow maturing over there. But another interesting point about Calvados actually not really meant to be old. That's kind of funny stuff about Calvados, because even when I tried to bring my Calvados, and I asked them to not to reduce it too drastically to 40%, they cannot understand why I want it. Because like everybody drinking 40% and they are happy. Why that weird guy wants 50% or something like the all cask strengths or whatever. And actually, director of Vallein Tercinier that actually helping me with that deal, he said to them, "Don't worry about it. He's just from Canada. It's very cold over there, so they need a little bit stronger spirit." But anyway, I think I fell in love for Calvados quite a few years ago, but I was struggling to find the good ones. Finally, I found the good ones, and finally, quite a few guys from my partners actually going to be bottling Calvados or gonna be bottled Calvados, and I'm very happy about it, because you're gonna have like majority of those guys came as a first of all independent whiskey bottlers, and they treating their cognacs and Calvados in a way that they treating single cask whiskeys, and I like that approach, So, but guys, you're gonna be judges. Try it. I love it, but
I'm enjoying this more than I thought I would.
okay.
Which shows that I've clearly got biases built in around Calvados. And Sammy put something in the chat about AOC. Apparently, Pays d'Auge is the gold standard for AOCs for Calvados. Most restrictive standards. You can have both double pot distilled as well and column distilled, but it depends on the regions. But let's just talk about this one for a moment. I have two notes I want to throw out there. Applesauce, like cooked in a dirty skillet, and blue cheese is what I'm getting on this one. So discuss.
Interesting note on the blue cheese.
Yeah, it's a little bit sweaty and sour and stuff in all the right ways. I like that. A little bit
got
almost
a cool funk to it.
It does, and there's a slight almost apple cider vinegar note to it too. You expect the apples, of course, but there's that little bit of a acidic tang there too. This is, how we talk about distillation kind of in a way being an amplifier, taking impurities in the spirit and amplifying them and intensifying and purifying flavors that you've already got. This is why we talk about beer a lot. This is a prime case of it being an amplification, right? Because you can absolutely taste an apple cider as a base for this. It's there, but it's just sharper, more intense. Quite elegant. I actually like it. And Calvados isn't typically my drink, but this is pretty.
Even like apple skins, like you can taste the skin still that was in there. Sean, thoughts?
I typically, as Igor even mentioned, like most Calvados is drank young, and I'm actually more familiar with that stuff that sits in that 6 to 12 years, which I quite like. And this kind of calls back to some of those cognacs where it's much more eau de vie forward, and you can kind of taste where it's from and what it is. And I do really enjoy that. But as it starts to sit in a cask and it starts to really take on those spicy notes, I really enjoy the, I don't know, it's young and old Calvados. It's so different from what I have had. And I kind of enjoy them in completely different ways. This one is like, it's a little bit more, I think everything I've had is also 40% too. So this is kind of nice to have a little bit more personality alcohol wise, even if it's only 5%, but it does kind of add to that textural. I think it's almost needed because with 40 years, it becomes a little anemic.
And actually very interesting notes that you, Andrew, mentioned. And I was told by the Calvados guys that actually, if you feeling that cheesy or whatever, like you said, the kind of not nice skillet, or how you mentioned this, yeah, dirty skillet, yes, but it's natural. It's a very natural taste. It's considered to be the good rum, but if you have like notes of plastic or some kind of chemical kind of weird aromas, which is very close to blue cheese, by the way, but it's a difference. Cheese, it's still natural smells and aromas, and taste, and as opposed to plastic, plasticine or something like that. If you have those notes, it means it was not good, and it's not good Calvados. If you have a cheesy and kind of fatty and kind of overcooked something, it's a good Calvados. That it's not my words, it's the words of the guys from Calvados, so it's supposed to be natural. As soon as you have some chemical kind of off notes, it means something was wrong with distillation, or it means something was wrong with maturation, usually distillation, obviously, because it was overheated, during distillation, or it was not really, the process was not really held in a proper way or something like that. So it's very easy to screw up Calvados, actually. But I like it, I like Calvados, and especially when you're in Normandy, eating kind of very nice stuff over there in the restaurant, and after that they automatically pour in you a glass of Calvados after dinner. I don't know, I like it.
I could see myself drinking this at the end of the night if I'd started with the 1934 Tercinier and got my fill of that first. And then I could enjoy a little bit of this, perhaps at the point in the evening when I'm not quite as discerning. But it's cool. I like it, as I said, more than I thought I would. But cool. So Igor, thanks for that on the Calvados, and Sammy, thanks for chiming in. And also thank you, Wikipedia, that got me some quick facts that I was able to sprinkle out there too. Shall we on to the 1972 Armagnac? So we've got two Armagnacs coming up here. Sadly, the first one is, actually, they might both be completely sold out. I know the first one is gone. This is the Whiskey Sponge 1972 Armagnac with a, rustic looking farmer sponge on the label there. Igor, what can you tell us, if anything, about where this particular Armagnac might have come from. Because with Armagnac, even more so than Cognac, you have many hundreds of small producers that in some cases fill only a couple of casks a year for their own purposes that occasionally will get picked up and blended with others. So Armagnac is a whole different beast from Cognac.
Absolutely, and they still have a practice of the traveling stills up to now, you know, because I don't think so any of the, you know, maybe somewhere in Italy or somewhere in Switzerland, they still have this practice. But in Armagnac, it's absolutely common practice. It's a traveling stills. So that's why it's, I don't know, hundreds of the small farmers that actually distilling their own Armagnac. And sometimes you have no idea where it's come from. And I think that's the case with that one. But I have some ideas because Angus actually works with one interesting house. It's not that popular in the world. It's fairly small. It's called Chateau de Gaube. So it might be from that house,
Sure.
but it's also blend of the two casks. So who knows? And you know, sometimes you're very restricted by the, you know, contract conditions. And unfortunately, I hate this actually, as you know. But unfortunately, we have to follow those rules, you know.
Yeah. Igor, that would be really funny if this actually is Chateau de Gaube, because the rose that we're going to follow this with is from Chateau de Gaube.
You
So
see,
maybe we'll see if there's some parallels between the two spirits there. But one of the things that I think is really that stands out for me right off the bat with this is that this is not quite as big and sort of rough and muscular as I would have normally expected. I mean, I think of Armagnac as being, you know, a much more kind of, and I don't mean this in terms of anything other than just as a descriptor, like a more rough masculine style of spirit, whereas Cognac is more delicate and feminine. And the funny thing is, I'm not finding this rough at all. And it could be time, like 49 years maturing is a lot of time for those rougher edges to get rounded out and polished off. But I'm not finding this kind of as rough and ready as I would have expected.
There's still some roughness on there though, for sure.
Mhm.
Like it's definitely like bourbon is to Canadian whiskey, like soft versus rough.
It's earthier, it's spicier for sure. But yeah, it's got a nice balance and a nice elegance to it too. And
But-
again, what are we looking
Yeah.
at ABV wise here? We're at 42.9, so relatively low.
but also, Andrew, you know Angus pretty well too. And Angus, he's a joker, you know, and he sometimes like to prove something that, you know, or do something very original. And it might be an idea behind this Armagnac to actually to prove to everybody that Armagnac it's not always rough and not always over masculine or something like that. It can be very elegant and quite light, I would say, as opposed to the probably next one that we're gonna try. So it's kind of you know, a known Angus for many years. I'm pretty much can see that he can do something like that, you know, because he's always looking for something unusual. And you know, in many cases he's very successful with that, you know.
Mhm.
And actually, you know, the big news, he's opening distillery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so
we saw that the other day. That's exciting.
yeah.
All right, Kurt, thoughts on the Armagnac 1972?
Yeah, that's cool. A juicy one. I'm starting to think maybe Angus has a type for his brandies. This one's got that same big, juicy, whiskey-esque kind of thing. The Cognac we had was. And if you remember the sponge tasting we did, remember that ridiculous Glenlivet that set me off, Andrew? There's kind of those jammy, fruity tones here I'm seeing now. Just I think I'm starting to see Angus's palate a little more clearly on the younger whiskeys, which is fun. Cool dram. Kind of hoped for a little bit more on this one, just because it's so fruit forward. I was kind of hoping the fruits would be just a little bit back more, but it's still pretty. I would chug it.
Okay, wait for the next one. It's coming soon. It's gonna be a little bit older and way more muscular. So it's gonna be another side of the Angus, you know. It's gonna be nice Angus, it's not so nice Angus. So I like it because it was for me it was quite different. But don't forget, we again, unfortunately, we don't have too many Armagnacs in Canada. You know, when you come into the Armagnac region in France, you have such an amazing array of the different Armagnacs. You know, because mostly we're dealing with what Darroze or Casterede. You know, and Darroze has his own house style, obviously. And I have Armagnac, for example, from a couple of absolutely obscure small houses. That actually, if somebody pour me blind, I will never gonna say that it's Armagnac. Sincerely, I will never figure it out. I mean, I will figure it out that it's actually probably grape spirit, but I'm not gonna say that it's Armagnac. I will say it's kind of some eau de vie from whatever, Alsace or Burgundy or something like that. It's an interesting house called Gelas. It's quite unusual. And another couple. So it's not always like it still have kind of variety, you know.
Yeah, which reinforces something that I've spoken to Sean and Andrew and maybe one or two others in the shop about. I think we're all on board. It would be really, really cool to do a blind spirits tasting, kind of like Sean referred to, but all the brown mature spirits with tons of age on them. Do Calvados, do rum, do grain whiskey, do malt whiskey, do the whole deal at different ages, like high age statements. I guarantee it would be a guessing game for some of those spirits for a lot of people. There's a lot of parallel notes you're getting at that point.
We did an April Fool's Day tasting a bunch of years ago where I did just that. And one of the things I put into it, and I just told people it was a blind tasting. I didn't tell them what they were tasting, and most of them assumed it was going to be whiskey. And one of the products that I threw into this tasting was rum, and it was that El Dorado 21-year-old. And this is going back about 12 years. Not a single person flagged that as not being whiskey, without me telling them what it was, which is kind of incredible. I mean, when you try it, and you know what it is, it kind of obviously seems like rum. But when you're talking about older spirits, aged spirits, they start to converge a little bit. Rums, cognacs, whiskeys have a tendency to get more similar to liver and wood, especially in certain circumstances. So it's easy to see how that could happen. I'm just trying to finish the poll here. So if you guys can fill the void before we move on to that Darroze 46 for just another second, I can save.
There was a crazy amount of cola on that one too. I really enjoyed like how like baking cola, or not even baking, like a craft cola. There was even like that hint of lime that you sometimes get on the cola. Oh man, really nice.
All right, I've almost got the poll fixed up here. And we've got one less to go. So why don't I wonder if I can do this without, I can minimize. Can I minimize? Hopefully my stuff is still there. It's still there. All right, let's go on to the 1966 Darroze. As I mentioned, this is also from Chateau de Gaube, which is the Morel family near Lausanne. 1956 is their first distillation. the way to think of Darroze is that it's kind of like Gordon MacPhail, in that it's sourcing cognac, Armagnacs from different producers, bottling it under their own label. But one of the things that's cool about it is they are fairly transparent about where they do acquire things from. The Baco variety is the primary grape in this. It is 56 years old, bottled at 43.5%. And I'm going to share the link here with you guys. Sean or Kurt, do one of you guys want to lead us off on the nose?
Both of these have been just super volatile and industrial, hey, like almost well, I mean, the first one kind of similar to this, like the first one, like the sponge was a bit more whiskey forward, but they both have a little bit of that really big toasty barrel.
Getting a little soupier, a little bit richer, a little bit jammier. These are way bigger drinks, you can tell. And we spoke about Armagnacs being a little bit more robust. This is absolutely more robust than we've had so far. And it's crazy that like a 1966 should be like just teetering on that edge of fragility. These really seem like there's a ton of personality still going on here. How much time did they spend in glass?
This is 56 years in wood, is my understanding on this.
That's crazy.
And yeah, loads of leather, loads of tobacco. I mean, this is the sherried space cider of everything that we've been drinking tonight, where you're getting, a pretty prominent oak influence, loads of spice. It's dark, it's earthy. But underneath that, you've got some softer, fruitier tones, still very clear grape spirit, kind of like a quince paste like note to the nose and palate.
There's a lot of cumin on the nose I'm getting too. It's pretty kind of neat.
Well, the palate is so spicy, like drying, spicy. I think that's kind of that classic Armagnac style, that more muscular style starting to show itself towards the finish on this. All right, we've gone through them once, so we're going to go through them a second time for what I call the speed round. We're not going to take as much time on them. We're just going to quickly riff on what we get. If you have any thoughts you want to share, fire them into the chat. Hopefully 7 spirits in, you're a bit more free with your opinions than maybe you might have been at the start. But let's start off again with that Montifaud 50 year, which we started with oh so long ago, about an hour and 15 minutes ago. The nose on it's very soft, but it's still there. I mean, I was a little worried that this cognac was going to get a bit overwhelmed by everything that followed it, but I think the nose is still holding up, and it's just showing incredibly good value.
Before we get to the end, I just want to make sure we see, like, Tyrone. This is the second time he's asked a question, and I forgot to point it out the first time. So before we get to the end, we should just make sure to answer it.
Well, maybe we can pause here for a moment. Igor, the question is, does a good year for wine equal a good year for cognac?
Tyrone, I cannot say that because first of all, it's all about microclimate and micro-region. It's so-called micro-terroirs and so on. So it can be absolutely amazing year for Burgundy or Laura, and it can be absolutely horrible year in the cognac. So it's if we're talking about the same micro area of the grapes of production, yes, it's the same stuff about wine and about the cognacs, because some wines actually produced in the cognac region, and very famous Pinot de Charan, and actually yes, in this case, but it's not the case of the kind of different regions, because it's a lot of micro terroirs and microclimates in France. I hope I.
No, Igor, that's a good point. Just to add on that, I remember asking this at both Remy Martin and Montifaud and a few others when I visited them. And what they're looking for from their grapes is a little different from what a winemaker is looking for. Like what's going on here is not a good wine equals a good cognac or Armagnac. Most of what they want to distill would actually make for terrible drinking wine. It would be much more acidic, and that's the specific style they're looking to create their eau de vies. And the better producers will limit their production to what their grapes will give them in a given season, as opposed to compromise on the type of wine and therefore the quality of spirit they produce. So there is a connection, but it's more, I think, to do with yields in a given year than it is to do with the eau de vie one year being infinitely better than another, was my understanding when I left that that experience. Back to the Montifaud really quickly. I think it still shows really well. It does seem a little more, one-dimensional than some of the cognacs that followed it, but it's a lot younger than 2 and 3, and we can probably forgive it for that. And
Honestly,
presumably it's also a blend.
from everything else that like we taste as well, going back to it, it's actually surprising how grape drink kind of started coming out from on the palate on that one, almost borderlining into like a cough syrup in a way, without like quite the same, chemical bite as a cough syrup, but very like Concordy.
Sean, if this is what cough syrup can be, sign me up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, historically, kind of.
it actually reminds me a little bit of the dregs from an old-fashioned cocktail, where maybe they put a little bit too much sugar in, because it's got a nice sweetness to it, but there's some nice like delicate herbal notes. It's still fruity. Yeah, I think it's showing well. It's definitely punching above its weight for dollar here, that's for sure. Kurt, any thoughts on the Montifaud before we move on to? We're not doing this in a very speedy fashion right now, but
No, just a little bit dumpier, a little bit more rounded, and I think it's just oxidizing too much. Move on to the next one.
moving on. All right, 1928. I know we talked about this earlier. To me, this just smells very old right now, like dusty bookshelves, an old, like a sitting room with old leather sofas in it. That kind of, it's got that antique feel to it on the nose.
It's holding up surprisingly well. I know Igor said this one was going to be pretty fragile, so you should have it pretty early. And he's right, because all the top notes are gone, but it's still holding up. It's cool.
It is holding up.
Yeah, there's still a lot of personality in the spirit itself. Even if, like,
Actually, yeah, actually on the taste, I would say it's revealed a little bit more fruits than before, in my opinion.
Well, my glass is kind of protecting it a little bit, so I think mine's been holding up maybe a bit better than yours, but it still shows really well. It's definitely knowing what we've got coming next with the Rue 34. To me, it's just surprising how delicate this is at 90 years of age. It is the major takeaway. And, the one comparison I'll draw to it is some of the really old Gordon MacPhail bottlings that I've had a privilege to try, like the Glenlivet 80, like the Mortlake 75, like the Glenlivet 70, that are, you'd expect 70 years in wood should be just really powerful and over the top. And every time you're kind of stunned by how balanced they are and how not over oaked they are. And it's the same thing with this 1928. You can tell it's old. It's got a really ancient feel to it, but without any of those negative connotations that you might expect from it. All right, 1934. Thoughts? Just got to check on the puppy for a minute. I'm worried he's chewing something.
whoa, some cool like cafe latte things coming on my nose as soon as I picked it up.
I was wondering if it was just me, because it seems a lot darker now than it did the first time around. And largely because I could not control myself and did drain this glass earlier, so I didn't keep any. So I'm just nosing an empty glass. So there's definitely a big oxidative effect, but definitely darker and more chocolatey, as you said, a little bit, richer on the dark, heavy fruits. I had nothing to
Very
say.
cool.
Useless to that one.
Yeah. Wow, even on the palate, it's really interesting. I've come across with some weird coffee notes on it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a way more
But
chocolate. Yeah.
it's also kind of starting to kind of fade though. Like this actually held, funny enough, this almost held up less well, worse than the 28. Like it's not falling apart, but it's definitely like, come down a little bit more. Maybe the glass is different maybe.
A lot of like, I'm not sure what you guys talked about, but for me, a lot of like candied nuts, chocolate, like some nice berry fruit tones coming off of it. It reminds me of those like German cookies that have like there's nuts, presumably cherry, and something chocolate kind of, and they're sort of like a flat cookie. It reminds me of those on the palate. But Sean, I agree with you. It does seem slightly more fragile than that 1928.
And Sean's right there.
What's
Uh,
that?
Sean's right. I think he's following on something that Tyrone said there. I think our cask too for the store absolutely stands shoulder to shoulder with the first one we had tonight.
Actually, if you ask me, I like a little bit more your
Yeah.
cask than standard 50.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it's a bit more I don't know. There's a bit more complexities to it, I think. Although I have to admit, between our Montifaud and our Tercinier, I do prefer our Tercinier a lot better.
Me too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in both cases, though, we're also talking higher ABVs, which I think makes a huge difference. And interestingly, and Igor, I'm not sure if this is something you've ever talked about with either Tercinier or with some of the others, but like, have you asked them about like whether they'll bottle or why they don't bottle at a higher ABV?
You mean which one?
Well,
Other guys. Okay. It's pretty standard answer. We always do like this.
Yeah.
We always do like this. And right now, actually, this trend is changing for sure, because more and more small houses getting into the cask strength experiments, and definitely it's really well received by the people, by the buyers, and it's definitely very well received by the whiskey guys. So I think they see potential to kind of sneak into that door of the whiskey drinkers that actually not sure anymore uh, about buying the whiskeys.
Mhm, mhm.
But
Well,
it's more houses coming to that.
yeah, for sure. I know with Montifaud, they have their own independent bottling line called Pierre Vallein, where they'll source eau de vies from different producers, and they've started bottling those at a higher ABV because they know that the type of people that are going to be interested in that sort of product are going to be the type of people that will be more impressed by higher ABVs and less filtering, all those different elements. All right.
Actually, Andrew, one more note. 40% cognacs consumed more in the French market, and the higher strengths going outside of France,
Yeah.
up right now at least.
Yeah.
So they're not accustomed to drink cognac with a high ABV, seriously.
And I mean, Igor, we could step this out a little further even and talk about the fact that France as a whole is not generally a cognac market to begin with. It's a Scotch market. Like the French drink more Scotch whiskey per capita than any other country in Europe. Granted, most of it is young, a lot of it's blended, but they are the largest consumers of Scotch whiskey by volume in Europe, which is
Absolutely.
Is that a really intense case of reaction to phylloxera, Andrew?
Oh yes.
I think that's a big part of it, Kurt. But the other part of it is, the Scots will refer to as the Auld Alliance. Scotland and France have an old alliance that goes back 500 years. And so there's deep connections there. And apologies if the puppy is barking in the background. He's fired up about something. So 1972 sponge cognac. If we can keep our speed round going at even a medium pace here, what are the thoughts?
Whatever perfume notes may or may not have been there earlier, I'm finding it's a little bit more intense now.
To me, I find it's more like more floral, like dried flowers and herbs than perfumed.
Yeah, fair. I guess, well, floral in general, I suppose. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like white flowers, you know.
But still pretty. The palette's great. I have to say, I don't know, mouthfeel wise, that's one of my favorites in this lineup just because of that higher ABV. I like the way that it's coating. I can feel it more on my palate. It's not rough or sharp. Yeah, I'm doing that one. Kurt, any thoughts on that before we go to Appletown?
Nothing to add. I love that one.
Okay, all right. We're going apples. The apples now are quite tart. Side of Sean, what would Michelle say cheese-wise? What are we getting here? Bit of Stilton. What's that one that comes in like the kind of the round thing and you open the lid on it and it'll stink up an entire room?
Oh, like a poisse? I'm not sure. Yeah, so it actually does kind of remind me of more of a rind than a cheese proper, but I don't know if it's a poisse.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
It's
pretty.
like a weird cloth bound or something.
Well, we've got some dried apricots on the side there and some other things too.
It's pretty dusty. Like you're wiping the dust off of something, but it's just getting everywhere.
I'm going to go back and say it again. It's interesting. I like it better than I thought I was going to like it. But it is my least favorite of the spirit styles we have in front of us tonight.
Spicy, boozy apple strudel. Wasn't enough aperitif kind of thing for me.
Igor?
No, it's a little bit too old for aperitif, but I said it's still after. I guess it's still after dinner, kind of, especially if you get kind of, you know, pretty fat lamb or something like that. It's very good actually. But you know, I just like variety of the spirits. I cannot say what I like more or less or whatever. You guys put such an amazing lineup. It's very difficult for me actually to point something and said I like it less. I'm always kind of imagining that when I'm gonna drink it, and it works well, you know.
That's fair. All right, on to the Armagnac sponge, 1972. So much leather and tobacco on that now. Big spices.
I'm getting a little bit of a dill top note now.
I can see that. Just a second, I've got to chime out for a moment.
A little bit of sage too.
I know I've been leaning heavier into those coffee notes, but this has a little bit of that too. I swear no one's drinking coffee in my apartment right now.
No, I can see that. I can see like a French roast coffee bean kind of thing.
But it's going a little bit more even whiskyish, I would say, that Armagnac.
No.
Very cinnamon.
Sorry, Kirk, go ahead.
Lots of cinnamon there.
Yep.
Robin, Shannon, and Simon just said it reminds of bourbon on the second pass. Yeah, there's a lot of bourbony notes on the nose. I think that's a lot of that cinnamon and stuff coming through for me. Get it.
And more than just bourbon too, like there's a lot of like Madagascar vanilla on there too. Like that kind of leans into that into that bourbon part.
But also rum. I think this is where you're starting to get into a spirit style that shows a lot of similarities to rum. I mean, a lot of rums are column distilled. more hoarsely, roughly distilled as well too. And yeah, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Armagnac. I find it's of the two brandy styles, the Cognac and Armagnac, it does seem to be the one that has the most parallels to drinking a single malt, and you can see in some of the reference points, the tasting notes, that the descriptors that Angus and others are putting out there of these references to old Glen Grant and things like that that keep cropping up in these. You can sort of see that. And I think I can have an appreciation of why that is and why they're looking there. But yeah, still digging that Armagnac. I think it's showing really well. All right, last one, on to the Chateau de Gaube from Darroze, the 1966.
Slightly more like a lemon solvency note now to me.
A little bit more rum heavy for me, a little bit more of that kind of molassesy kind of tone.
Yeah. Touch of heat from it for me, whether it's the spice or the alcohol, shows well. It's interesting to try those two side by side, because if they are from the same house, they're not that far apart in age. There's quite a difference there between the two of them in terms of style. All right.
Definitely doesn't have the same body as a rum, that's for sure. Well, at least not rums in that same kind of realm that I might have had.
But Sean, if you'll indulge me here, what I've learned from some of the rum tastings we've done in the last year is what is rum, because it is like the wackiest, most out of control spirit style that's out there right now. And
well, you didn't sit down on our agave spirits tasting though. Like that was really kind of, the last one we had was really something else too.
Really? Because the one rum that sticks out in my mind, and I forget which one it was, but it was the one where I said it smelled like embalming fluid in a Build-A-Bear workshop. And I think it had polar bears. Was it that one?
Yeah, I think it was the Portuguese one. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like out of control wacky. That was the Madeira one, right? The one from Madeira?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Anyway. All right. I'm going to fire up the poll here. So you get 2 votes. It doesn't matter. Well, actually, it does matter from this because you only get first and second choice. If you're sharing a feed tonight, unfortunately, you have to share your vote unless you want to log in independently in the next couple of minutes. Yeah, while they're doing that, Igor, I know you didn't have the fortune of sampling all of these tonight. I know there's at least 1, if not 2, that you didn't have. But what if you had to pick one of these as your favorite? If someone said, Igor, you can only drink one of these for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Just a second. I think I would still choose probably 28.
28.
Yes, probably I will choose 28. At least it's what I feel now. Because before I thought it's gonna be 34, but I feel now that I'm probably gonna drink 28. And by the way, guys, I just wanna say that in this series of the cognacs from Malternative, we have 3. We have 3 bottlings. We have 82, 75, and 28. And guys, I'm strongly suggest you to try 75, because by quite a few bloggers in the world, it's considered to be cognac of the year.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. So it's kind of very cool cognac.
We have it in store, but Sean, you'll note we do need a photo of it. So
Yeah. And
Noted.
actually those pictures, actually that's another interesting point. It's actually inner side of the steel with all this copper oxidization.
oh,
What?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's actually copper from the inside the steel.
there you
That's
go.
really neat.
Yeah.
That is-
I mean, they're
Art.
really pretty labels.
You
So
can
we need
Yeah.
a part 2 to this tasting that I'm hearing.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
not? You know, we're getting more and more. I'm definitely gonna get more and more cognacs into my portfolio. That's for sure. And like I said, we're cooking quite a few. And another nice announcement that I can do. So it's gonna be soon special cask for Canada of Vallein, and it's gonna be next old one. It's gonna be from 1930.
Oh,
Yeah.
1930.
Yes, coming soon.
now really quickly, I noticed only 4 of you have voted so far, which
Yeah, what the
I
heck,
know
guys?
I know there's more than 4 of you taking part because I can physically see you on the screens, but go ahead and vote because we are going to call that shortly. All right, I'm going to put Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot first. If you had to choose 2 favorites from the list tonight, what would they be? Oh, the
That's
poll
tough.
disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Oh,
here, you know what? Sorry, Sean, I'm going to stop you. We're going to
Yeah.
relaunch the poll because apparently it disappeared. So not sure what happened
no
there. So
sweat.
you've started from scratch. If you answered before, you're going to have to re-answer. Sean, what were your 2 favorites tonight?
It's a tough call, honestly. So the easy answers are like 28 and 34. I don't necessarily want to do that though. I actually really, I would say that 34, and although I like that 28, I think I might, yeah, I think I might say the Sponge 72 as well.
The cognac.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, the Cognac. I guess they're both.
I really like that Sponge 72 cognac too. But Sean, I'm going to give you the same advice I give my wife and daughter all the time. Follow your heart
Yeah.
and it'll never lead you astray. Kurt, favorites.
I think I made it clear earlier when I said I was head over heels in love with that one. And the other one was like the perfect follow-up. Bang, bang, same ones as Sean, got 1934, I'm head over heels for. And that Sponge Cognac 1972, wow. Like, I know it seems young in comparison, but man, there's a ton of vibrancy there for a 49-year-old. That's incredible. Cool.
Young.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. I'm going to side with Igor on this. I think I'm going to go 1928. And the thing I like about that 1928 over the 34 is I don't think I'd get tired of drinking the 28, whereas the 34, I think there'd be times where I'd find it was just a little bit too much. And then I'm going to go, I think the 72 might be my favorite, my second favorite. And this is weird because again, I'm normally more an Armagnac guy than a Cognac guy. But I'm actually going to go Montifaud 50 for my second because compared, it's less than half the price, I think, than almost anything else in this lineup. And it's not the most complex, but it's holding its own and it's very drinkable. And so I'm going to, my 1928 is my, most people will never buy this or drink it bottle. And the Montifaud 50 is my people's choice. So that's my number 2. Because I mean, anybody who wants a good bottle of cognac and is willing to buy Remy Martin XO or Hennessy XO that are 10-ish years of age, you can have 50-year-old cognac for the same price. I mean, to me, that's fucking mental. We should never have this in stock. It should be sold out all the time because of how good a deal it is, how good a value it is. All right, I'm going to check in on the poll. We'll see where we're at here. Most of you have voted, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds before we call it. Igor, before we wrap here, I do want to say a big thank you to you for joining us tonight, giving us some insight and a bit more background on some of these producers that we clearly would not have had ourselves. So Igor, thank you.
You're welcome, guys. It was really fun for me, and I'm, I will keep going. I'm more and more curious about, interest in French spirits, and I'm coming back to France definitely this year again, and I'm gonna find some jewels So we're gonna try together more, definitely.
Sounds good. Thanks, Igor. Sean, Kurt, thank you as always for joining in. So here are the results. I'm going to end the poll and share it with everyone. The first round winner tonight is the Malternative 1928. The Rue 34 and the Sponge 72 tied for second. In second favorite, interestingly, the Rue 34 has a pretty wide berth, but a three-way tie for second for the Montifaud 50, the Malternative 1928, and the Darroze 66. So if we're going to call an overall winner tonight, it's got to be that 1928. The Grande Rue 34 looks like it's a close second. So those are our favorite spirits in tonight's tasting. I'll share the results there if you want to have a look at them yourselves for a moment. Yeah, this was a fun tasting. I'm glad we did it. I want to say thank you to everybody who bought a set of samples for this tasting. In the end, we sold I think we sold 3/4 of them in the end, which surprised me. We've got a huge following for whiskey, but things like Cognac and Armagnac don't have quite the same draw yet. But there's such a good opportunity here and such a value proposition in front of us that I'm grateful for all of you taking a flyer on this tasting and joining us for the ride. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. Sincerely hope you had fun. We've got Easter coming up, Passover. Happy Easter, happy Passover to anyone who's taking part tonight. Lots of tastings coming up in April, May, and June. And there might just be another whiskey sponge tasting. Igor and I have been back and forth on that. So we're hoping to pin that down. But for tonight, I want to say thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Be well. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Thanks, guys.
Night,
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah, it's great. Thanks, Igor.